Hello and welcome to the Anno Union dev blog about audio. My name is Felix, I'm the audio designer working on Anno 1800. We, the audio department here at Ubisoft Blue Byte, are very happy to show you some of the work we've been doing on the latest Anno title. Before we get started, we would like to recommend to use either a good pair of speakers or some headphones, so you will be able to catch all the details shown in the following minutes. Let's start with ambience audio. What you can hear now is what we call location layer. The location grid, visually represented by these small cubes, takes point samples of the terrain below, thus giving us information about both building types as well as natural elements in the current field of view. The readout is then split up into 4 sectors, from which we compose a quadraphonic bass ambience. To spice things up, we also play back one-shot sounds based on the information we get from the grid. These one-shot sounds add an additional layer of detail, making the game's world both more believable and more intuitive to navigate. The next system we'd like to show you is the listener. The listener is a microphone-like device that receives inputs from the game. You can think of it as your ears in the world of Anno. In this video, it is represented by a blue sphere. Similar to reality, sounds in Anno 1800 are influenced by the distance between your ears and the sound source. So if we change this distance, the sounds will adapt accordingly. The FreeCam mode allows the player to move the camera freely within the world. Because of this, we created a listener system that adapts accordingly to always provide the player with reasonable information about his play session. The range goes from a first-person perspective with highly spatialized sound sources to a very distant camera position. Next topic, activation range. We dynamically turn sound sources on and off to keep Anno 1800 very performant. Every red sphere represents a single sound source. By default it's switched off. As we enter a red sphere with our listener, its color changes to green, meaning it's active now. As islands in Anno easily can get very crowded with lots of different sound sources, we invented a system to summarize sound sources in a reasonable manner to guarantee a clean and informative soundscape. We call it clustering. As you can see here, if sound sources from the same kind appear within a certain range, they form a group, turning them into a single sound source. If one of the sound sources leaves the cluster range, it again becomes an independent emitter. This procedure frees up performance and prevents clutter from many identical emitters firing at the same time. The clustering system is also dependent on the player's distance to the objects, so if we get closer to the group, it resolves for a more accurate positioning. The goal is to provide Anno players with a highly diversified sound experience. To achieve this goal, we make use of a system that randomly spawns sound sources within a given range. We call those RFX, random effects. RFX allow us to make the game's world richer by adding elements that aren't necessarily represented in the graphics. Depending on the buildings they are used, those ranges can have different restrictions. The combination of the clustering system and the RFX is what results in a clean and informative soundscape. As you can see here, we also cluster buildings of similar types, depending on the distance of the player. If we are close to those agriculture buildings, every object has its own sound source. If we increase this distance now, all those buildings form a group and randomly spawn sounds within their range. The trigger frequency of those sounds is depending on the productivity values each building in the cluster is currently at. This way the player always remains in track of what's happening within his Anno session. Okay, that's it for now. We hope you enjoyed this sneak peek behind the audio curtain. Thanks for watching everybody. Goodbye.